welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where we'll be chatting about whatever. I will say, I don't usually, I do sometimes bring up my gacha games, that sort of things, but I don't normally talk about what's going back in depth of them, apart from Genshin or Honkai, because those are kind of popular ones. I will say, I've just soloed 2 of the banner characters in my daily solos and in my games today, and you might not know what that means. Basically, I hit 2 0.4% chances in a row I hit one 0.4% chance in 2 different games on the same day today. It's insane. So I don't know, maybe I'm gonna I was going to say win the lottery, but I guess I'd probably be the opposite if I'm buying into the gambler's fallacy, so I'd lose the lottery. But anyway, good evening everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 8:50 PM on Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. So it seems like there's a torrential rainstorm going on, which seems probably not the greatest day to be staying at a campsite. But, if you like the sound of rain on the tent, which, I do personally, I think some people probably find it quite noisy, then, more power to you. What can we talk about today? I mean, it really was just ridiculously low percent chances. It's literally, I did a daily solo in one of the games. I did it on Starlight Stage, and I pulled one of the banner characters. You might be like, which one? I pulled Yoshino. And then I did it again on Project Sakai, and I pulled one of another banner character. I pulled Hanami, and I was like, what the heck is going on? That's insanely lucky. And obviously, you are Elise, right? I am someone who is reasonably well versed in probability and statistics and that sort of thing. So I like to think I fall into fewer traps than the average person does when it comes to thinking about probability. Because I've spoken about this before quite a lot, that probability is not very intuitive to humans. If you don't know, I guess let me enlighten you. Humans generally are really, really bad at estimating probabilities. And I think a way you can simulate that is if I got you to be like, hey, can you write down 50 fair coin flips in a row, just randomly, what would it look like? And a thing which I think is very notable is if you get a human to do it, the average person will probably just do heads, heads, tails, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails. Basically, they will never have a string of more than 3 or so heads or tails, because to them that doesn't, or to humans in general, intuitively that feels quite unlikely. It's quite unlikely to get 4 heads in a row or 4 tails in a row. So why would it appear like you're sort of instinctively reluctant to put it down if you're trying to simulate a fair coin? But in reality, by 50 coins, by 50 flips, your expected amount of 4 in a row you're meant to get is 3, I think, and it's expected to get a 5 in a row, and probably it's not all that unlikely to get a 6 in a row or a 7 in a row even, to be perfectly honest. Which is a crazy thing. So if you actually simulate the things, so it look very different from how a human being would try to simulate randomness. So human beings are not very great at simulating randomness, but also we're not very good at predicting randomness. There's another anecdote I've told quite a lot because I find it fascinating, because it sort of combines my interest in both probability and statistics and game design. Is that in XCOM, the majority, in every single difficulty except the hardest difficulty, I believe, the probabilities lie to you. And they are basically way overcompensating for the player's benefit. So there'll be 90%, chance for a hit, and it's actually 99% chance to hit or something. And when it says 50% chance to hit, it's actually 70% chance to hit or something. Because for whatever reason, human beings will see something 90% chance to hit logically we can look at it and break it down and be like, oh yes, that's a 1 in 10 chance. If I do this 10 times, I'm going to expect to miss one of the times. But for some reason in our brain, we interpret it, we sort of internalize it intuitively as this is a 100% hit rate, this is going to hit. So when it misses, you just go, what? You got ripped off. Or if you take a lot of 90% chances, statistically you might get more or less than usual, but you'll sort of be like, oh my god, this game is so difficult, 9% chance it always fails or something. Basically, human beings are not very good at instinctivizing, intuiting. That's a word. How do I verbify this? intuiting probabilities in general. And yeah, and it's only in like the hardest difficult, it might not be every XCOM, it might just be this one XCOM, it's only in the hardest difficulty where they actually genuinely follow the probabilities which are given. So they'll be like 50%, it's actually genuinely 50% in the hardest difficulty. I find that fascinating to even hear about, and I think it makes sense. Like, to be fair, I've not like broken down the XCOM code, I have not verified it for myself, it's a something I've, I suppose, taken for granted at face value, but I think it makes sense, like from my own experience with probability and like understanding. But there's a lot of very unintuitive results. I mean, I think one that also comes up a lot of time. I don't know why I'm talking about so much about probability so much, but here we go. I like maths, so sue me. But the thing that often catches people out, and it's probably sort of like an introduction to conditional probability 101 is, okay, like say you flip a coin, 10 times in a row or whatever, and then you're on your 9th toss and you're on your 10th toss and the first 9 tosses were all landed heads somehow, and then the question goes, what is the probability that you toss that the coin will land up heads on this 10th row, under the assumption that the coin is fair and not biased? And instinctively, a lot of people, quite fairly, I'm not going to, hate on people doing this, because it's something which you sort of need to overcome probabilistically, logically, through deeper understanding. But the intuition is, well, flipping a coin 10 times in a row and like getting heads every single time is really unlikely. So it must be a tiny probability for it to happen, right? If it lands heads, that's 10 heads in a row. That's super unlikely. So I'm going to say it's something like 0.1% chance of happening. The actual answer is it's 50% chance. It's 50-50. And the reason is, I think the most intuitive explanation is, you've already flipped 9 heads in a row. You are already like 90% of the way in that incredibly improbabilistic scenario. Like, think of all the timelines diverging, I suppose, with every single coin flip. You are already on the one, which is extremely rare to begin with. So the fact that, going from extremely rare going from like very rare to an extremely rare event doesn't require a huge, like a tiny probability. So it's just 50-50 because, the more logical way, I suppose, to think about it is the fact that the coin is not affected by things behind it. The coin is not smart. It doesn't have memory, is a concept used in statistics. It basically doesn't remember things which have already happened to it and doesn't influence its future outcomes. No matter what happens, no matter what you do, if you flip that coin fairly and it's a fair coin, it's always going to be 50-50. And I think that's something which is quite hard to internalize, because so instinctively in your mind, you're just like, yeah, but it's such a 10, like, it feels wrong, I suppose, saying like it's 10 coins in a row, you're flipping 10 heads in a row. But the distinction is, it's not 50-50 to get 10 heads in a row. Getting 10 heads in a row by itself is still 1 in 2 to the 10 chance, which is like 1 in 1,000 or something. That's still incredibly unlikely. The actual question is, what's the probability of getting 10 heads in a row after you've already gotten 9 heads in a row? So that's the important part. The conditional probability can affect the total probability, I suppose, depending on what the conditions are. And, if you don't like maths or something, that's fair enough. But I still think probability in combinatorics there's a very fascinating branch of it. And probability, I think, is one of the best ones, probability in statistics, because it's incredibly applicable. Hence its subgenre, or genre, I suppose, macro genre, is called applicable maths, to everyday life, or even people who don't need maths. You don't need to work or like use maths in your everyday like job, living or career or whatever to get use out of statistics and probability, right? Just intuitively understanding how things are likely to happen, probabilistic events, is very useful, I think. Even not always useful, but still. I mean, it's also like the human understanding of probability is something which is capitalized a lot of in especially things like casinos and betting and gambling in general. The long story short of gambling is you are basically destined to lose, or at least casinos. I think it's like every single game except for like maybe poker and blackjack or something, if you're expertly like good at them. Every single game in a casino you are expected to lose money on every time you play. So I cannot reiterate enough, please do not gamble. just like in general. And if you do, make sure you understand that you are paying money for the entertainment. You are not going to win things of it. Do not go in with any expectation to win things of gambling, because you won't. It sounds silly to say, but it's also a thing where, like, if you have like an addictive personality, I suppose, in the first place, it's not exactly the easy cycle to break out of. But, you know, I just want to preface to that. But there's two important aspects, I suppose, just to sort of be aware of, which is taken advantage of in like casinos and gambling. And one of them is called, I think one of them is literally just called the gambler's fallacy, if I recall, and the other is called like, and the other is like the concept of like hot streaks, and is like the inverse, which is like hot streaks. So the gambler's fallacy is basically kind of tying into the idea of, you know, what's the probability of flipping 10 heads in a row after flipping 9, and you go, it's very unlikely, so it must be tails. The gambler's fallacy is actions of a past affecting independent actions of a future. Which, basically put in more simpler words, is if something has happened X times already, you know, it makes it more likely that it's not going to happen in the future. For example, I flip 5 heads in a row. That means my next flip of a coin is like guaranteed to be tails, because no, it's so unlikely to get 6 heads in a row. It's basically the consequence, I suppose, of that thought experiment I already talked about, that probability question, I suppose. It's not really a thought experiment. I talked about already. So, you know, I think it's like often spoken about in like roulette, being like, oh, it came up red like 3 times in a row or something, I'm going to bet on black because it has to land on black this time. And that's just not how it works, unfortunately. It's still like 50-50. Well, not technically 50-50, isn't it? Like 29 out of 48 out of 50. Sure, why not, Apollo? And the other idea is hot streaks, is sort of like the concept of being like, whoa, I'm on a roll, I must be like being amazingly lucky today. So, you know, you keep going, you keep gambling, and then eventually you hit a loss. Something like that. But interestingly enough, there are ways to, I suppose, like, get one over on casino. And I suppose the one way to actually do it is just get really good at poker and blackjack. You know, get really good at identifying people's tells, get really good at, like, playing the game, like, know exactly what the probabilistic best outcome is at every single situation, and get really good at bluffing. And then you actually stand to make money, I think, off of it. Not a lot of money. You're much better off, like, doing literally anything else, I think, for making money. Well, okay, maybe not literally, but still. Yeah. There's also a lot of other concepts. I don't know if I talked about these concepts before, but things like loss aversion. And you know me, I'm talking about probability. I'm very probabilistic. Always go for the lower option, even if we lose out. You know, 6 times out of 10, we would get the victory on that one. Yeah. So what was I saying? Okay, we play the game. We can legally now leave. It'd be nice if we could actually say to Apollo, hey, well, I'm going to take my leave now, rather than just rudely leaving the house, but whatever. So yeah, so anyway, all of this is justification for me saying me hitting two 0.4% chances is still incredibly unlikely. You know, technically it's not actually 2 independent like chances in a row, because technically it's 3 chances in the one, 2 chances of the other. It's like, okay, out of 5 rolls, 2 of them hit a 0.5% chance. What's the probability of that? I guess I could work it out. What's 5 choose 2? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, right? What's that? 10. So it's going to be 10 times 0.4 squared times times 0.004 squared times to the power 2 times 0.996 to the power 3. What is that? I don't know. Let's work it out. And by work it out, I mean type it into Google. Actually, we could probably do binomial probability calculator. Another thing that you also need to do with these sort of things is oftentimes you need to consider the situation of you get this lucky and greater. Because, and what I mean by that is, like, I would still be telling the story if I got 3 lucky rolls in the 5, or if I got 4 or 5 lucky rolls. I still need to take those into account as well. Well, I should take those into account as well, because anything where I hit 2 lucky rolls or greater would be worthy of a story, right? So, you know, what's the probability of me telling that story? That's a probability. So anyway, hold on. Probability of success on the trial, 0.004. Oh, do not go back in that room. We need to go hit rocks as well. Number of trials, 5, and number of successes, 2. So, I mean, in this case, considering the cumulative probability, it doesn't make much of a difference because it's so small already. But we hit a 0.16% chance today. That's crazy. 0.16%. I mean, yeah, again, I've also been playing like some of the games for like over 6 or 7 years now. So, well, not Project Sky technically. Ooh, money rock. But, so, you know, eventually it's kind of like expected to happen. Law of large numbers. That's also actually a very great probability thing to know. Is basically, how do I describe law of large numbers? Like, in the long run, the average of all attempts will tend towards the mean, or the average. So, but basically, in the long run, you know, super unlucky and super lucky moments eventually get averaged out to be indistinguishable, I suppose. So if you flip a coin like 100 times or something, you somehow get like 75 heads, you know. The law of large numbers says you expect that as you flip this like up to infinity amount of times, it would eventually trend to 50% heads, 50% tails. That's just like another nice thing to know. I don't know. Is this like a stats lesson? I don't know what I'm going to title this episode. I guess I'll title it 0.16% chance. It is still incredibly unlikely, don't get me wrong. Which is why I'm still very surprised. Like, even hitting like 0.4% chance in the first place is sort of like a whoa. Technically, actually, it shouldn't be this, because technically it should be a 1.2% chance. Rather than 0.004. Because 0.004 would be me specifically getting those exact characters and cards, rather than any other banner cards or characters. So, let's just update that in our calculations. 0.001... So it's a 0.139% chance. Still quite unlikely. That's like 1 in every 700 or so trials. You'd expect to appear. You'd expect it to appear once. That's still pretty lucky, you know. I'm not gonna count my blessings before I hatch, which is not the saying in the slightest, but it's just, I don't know, pretty unlikely. Anyway, maybe it's a better clickbaity-esque title if I put 0.004. I don't think it's even going to make any sense. I don't even know what's the like super low chance, low probability. That's what I'll call this episode, because I don't know, using numbers just sort of feels a bit weird, I suppose, in the title. Anyway, I guess this was just kind of like a lesson in probability. I don't really know. But for now, I'm going to round off this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.